the tide comes in and the tide goes back out. What you've got to be willing to do is stay on the boat. And you said something interesting for me earlier, paid review. See, in my world, a paid review doesn't exist. There is an argument to be said today. If you're building a 5-inch, go on the presets tab, look for the Superfly presets, and just install it. It'll probably be about bang on.
Today on episode 11 of the FPV podcast, I have got the absolute privilege of having Ian from Madstech on for a chat. This is the longest and most thought-provoking episode that we've had so far on this show, and I actually learned some things about FPV that I've never even considered before. So without further ado, let's get on to this episode with Ian, and provided that you listen in for long enough today, I reckon you're gonna learn something new too. I think the best way for us to get started into this is with my quickfire questions. I'm not sure if you've seen any of the other episodes, but I do quickfire questions where you sort of answer them as quickly as you can, and I've got 5 today, so if you're keen on them.
That's not too bad.
Yeah? No.
Yeah, let's go for it.
I'm not throwing 10 at you right now, so yes.
I hope I know the answers.
Yeah, well, hey, they're all subjective answers. That's the great thing. At least I'm
that's
not
good news.
being like, testing. That's a great way. I should start off with some exam questions for people, and then they'll like really get them going. But
that would just get everyone feeling just right for a podcast. Let's drag them back to their school years.
No, we'll start off. These are personal, not personal, but personal to you, quickfire questions. So the first one, if you're ready, is favorite place to fly?
Where I am in Wales, I'm in, for those who don't know where I am, I'm in South Wales in UK, and it's, what I like, what is often said is God's country, but it's beautiful open areas. I've got sea, I've got sand, I've got mud. We've got a bit of everything. About the only problem I have around here is weather. Because we get everything coming over this side of the country. It rains here an awful lot, but it's a phenomenal place to fly because the only thing really is I lack sort of abandoned buildings and bandos. We don't have much of that down here at all. Hence the reason you don't see that in my content, because it just doesn't exist. You see some of these places in America and they have like this abandoned stuff, and you're like, I want that near me. I just want that around here.
I mean, how was the Rotor Riot? What was it? Rotor Riot Rampage, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Like, that was an insanely massive band. It is. Oh, I was watching that. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, and I was watching one of the bots videos, and he went to that abandoned power station, I think it was, or that chemical plant, whatever it was. And you're just like, that is incredible. And we have got a few sort of non-used big structures down here now, but you won't get near them. And I mean, they still have live security there and the things like that. So unfortunately, but yeah, where I live predominantly, I'm not a heavy bando flyer or anything like that. I'm not a great pilot. I'm just a pilot. I just fly, but I'd like a bit more of the fun stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right. Next one is, do you run your props in or out?
Yeah, that's a funny one. That I genuinely don't notice a lot of the time. So if I'm building, I run them out. However, it's not really something I pay too much attention to. I do get to see a lot of bind and flies. Funny enough, there's a new one that's just come in. I can't say what it is because it's not actually out yet, but that's running props in. And I did actually notice that yesterday, but it isn't something I pay that much attention to. You get the argument of it stops it getting sucked in or sucking things in, which is a win. I tend to have destroyed the prop by the time I'm that close to something. So in or out really doesn't change much.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, I'm usually going at whatever it is with enough pace that it's not going to help.
Yeah, it's gonna end in a disaster. But that's me too. I feel the exact same. Except I feel like if I was to have a consistent bind and flies coming in, just the thought of like trying to remember which drone has got props in and props out. Like when you're like, I mean, not that it's every day that you're going to go and shatter all 4 props at once. In fact, if you do manage to do that, you're probably doing a really good job.
Right. That's prize-winning territory.
That honestly might be right. So I guess that's fair then. That's props in or out when you're. So wait, what was that? You run your props out when
I build now intentionally out. So if I'm building, I will make a conscious effort at the point of config to go, ooh, let's run them out. I don't personally feel there is any flight benefit other than not sucking in things when you're up close, really.
Yeah. Okay. The next one, which will be interesting considering you do get a lot of bind and flies, is what's your go-to camera angle? Ish, because I mean, I don't think anybody goes by the exact degree.
No one measures it exactly. I do like quite a lot of angle, but I am terrible at landing. I crash, and I love the most angle I can put on a quad, but the problem then is you can see nothing when coming in at a height, and there are a lot of places I fly where you're not always able to come in at a low level, so sort of come in and come down at like a foot and then just shut down. There's a lot of times like where I fly, I'm in a very tight area, and a lot of time I have to go up and over or up and out. And the problem is with heavy camera angle, you see nothing. There are periods where I'm just sitting there just going, oh, right. You know what I mean? Come down. I do like a lot of angle. Angle equals speed. I prefer to be faster. I tend to push it, but it is a payoff, and it's really hard. And you do see a lot of the very good pilots argue you shouldn't run a lot of camera angle. You do see a lot of them say that, 20 degrees, 24 degrees is enough, because your angle should be on your action camera where you're filming. That is more complicated with O3, because you're now you're using both for filming. So I have on O3 especially been pushing the camera angle a bit more. That's fair.
Okay. And then what rates are you running?
I tend to be between 850 and 900. But I have a lot of expo.
You got quite fast rates then.
I don't race, but I don't like to have to go right to the stick end to get a lot of movement. So what I tend to fly is high rates with a lot of expo. So it will fall off quickly, if that makes sense. So I have a bit of soft stick movement in the center, and then I don't want to have to go to the stick edge to then get it to absolutely move if I want to. And
that's fair.
I find, most quads I think come at like 670, 700. And I do like, I watch on Instagram a lot of the guys, and they absolutely slam the sticks to the end. I think I'm a bit old for my hand to move that fast. So what I tend to prefer is not having to move the stick as much to get the rate there. And it is that I've managed to find a mix on some of my quads of just the nice amount of expo and rate, that I've got like an area in the middle of the sticks that is comfortable. And then the second I go out of that, it will just roll over. What I'm really bad at on this, though, is I don't tune any of my quads to fly the same. And this is something I am shocking for, because I'm flying so many different aircraft. A lot of the time I'm picking one up as it's come from the manufacturer and testing it like that, because I don't want to put my own rate on something that someone else has built to test, because it should be as it's come out the box. And then I might fly it like again, and then you sort of go, oh, I haven't done this. Something I've been meaning to do is take all of my quads one day and put the same rates across the board. And that's why often in videos, and when I do really show some flying, I can be very different between two different quads, because they're set up completely different. I'll swap from one to another, and I'm like, whoa, what's this doing? Well, this is all over the place.
Yeah, when I was going from, originally I set up, so I built a race quad, and I had my Nazgul, bind and fly. And so I set up rates on my race quad, but I didn't touch the Nazgul, and I flew the race quad for a bit, got pretty used to that. And then I went back to my Nazgul, and I was like, holy crap, this is so different, because I've got very slow rates for like the thought of racing. They're like up just over 500. They're 533, which is Evan Turner.
Evans,
533 rates. So I run those, but the Nazgul was set to whatever was stock on it, and holy crap, man! I know the feeling that you must have going from your rates to a stock rate, because it's different.
Yeah, and I'm not, what I like is to be able to stop and move the aircraft very quickly. So I want I want it to be fairly precise control. And I don't fly a lot of banners, but when I am flying, I'm flying around trees, bushes, and stuff. And what I want to be able to do is get it to literally, oh, I want to stop now, or move, turn, corner, flip, without having to get to the full stick. And I just genuinely think I'm a little bit slow. That's my own reactions are just not necessarily fast enough to, because you see some of the lads like on Instagram and they are banging the sticks. You know what I mean?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, and I'm just like, yeah, I need to learn to do that. I need to get better.
I know. Instagram's a killer, man. You start looking at these reels, you're like, wow, man, maybe I shouldn't be flying. Like I'm just not even at this level.
Yeah, I'm not a great pilot, and I do believe that it's all time and skill. So it's all time and effort. You know, if you put 100 hours, 1,000 hours, 10,000 hours into one aircraft, I think the biggest mistake people make is they keep changing aircraft, and that's my problem. You need to pick one aircraft and just keep flying it, and then tune it and get it to where you want it to be with that tune, and then try and replicate that on others. My biggest problem is I'm swapping between aircraft all of the time, and I'm never getting a feeling for one. I have one quad, which is my favorite, which is it is a 5-inch, but it's a very compact 5-inch. It's a very old frame. Frame's like 6 years old. It's built like a tank. It just flies amazing because it's light. It's got analog in it. I've just tuned it right, and I keep looking at that, going, I need to replicate that feeling on all of the others somehow. And you're not always going to be able to do it because of the weight on the digital stuff, especially. You feel the weight penalty very quickly. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. 6 years is a long time for a frame, so at least you know it's going well, and it is a
it won't break.
solid
It's
frame.
got like 6 mil arms or something dull. So it was an absolute beast of a thing.
Yeah, wow.
It's not the lightest.
Okay, and then what's your? Well, I mean, that's that. I guess it's what comes with a bit of stability, though, right? So you have the thick frames. It's not going to break, but it's a little bit heavier. But I mean, 6 years ago, and even now, you can go out for a fly and still enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess the next question, which is the final quick fire question, which has been great. We've been elaborating on these. I love it.
Yeah.
Is what's your favorite go-to controller at the moment?
Or flight controller or RC?
RC controller.
RC controller, Boxer, hands down. The Boxer is a bit of an interesting story for me because, and I will elaborate on this one a bit because I'm sort of now seen as the Boxer shill, but the TX16 is too big for me. I just don't find it comfortable in the hands. I got the Zorro, which I loved, but it's too small, and the battery life, as much as the radio is good, the battery life is just not realistic. And I was bouncing between, and I'd come across the Mambo, which was like 80% there for me. The size was perfect. The gimbals were full size, all the switches and buttons I want. My only complaint with the Mambo was it didn't have Express LRS built in, and there were some other quirks with it as well. And I remember whinging about this on the channel for ages, and I kept saying, I want a Mambo, and the people who watch the channel regularly, I want a Mambo with 1 watt of Express LRS built in, Edge TX, and full-size gimbals that I can put AG01s in. And I kept people sending me random messages, and then one day I just got sent a picture by Radio Master, and I literally almost wet myself. And it's like they made the radio for me. And it is genuine for me, and radios are a personal thing. It is perfect. It really is. The size, the weight, the shape, the battery life. It's just about that. I know the TX16 is a really popular radio. I just find it too big. If I was flying big fixed wing all of the time and I needed 18 million switches, I get it. But for me, I think the Boxer really sits in the Boxer and Mambo, and it would be fair to say the Mambo for the TBS crowd. Let's be realistic; they're of the same style. Well, the Boxer at least is a copy of that.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I've got the Boxer coming in next week to me, and I currently run the TX16S. Love the TX16S, but I have to wear a neck strap with it because it's too big for me to hold and fly with. So I always have to run the neck strap. And so I'm really excited to give the Boxer a try because I have seen your videos on the Boxer. seen how excited you've gotten over them as well.
Yeah.
And also obviously seen the hundreds of other reviews out there that are like, the Boxer is literally the new better TX16S for a lot of people. So I'm very interested to see how it goes. I'm a little bit nervous about those switch,
the push buttons on the
top,
corners. If I'm going to be critical of the radio, the left hand one the right hand one is a complete waste of time because it's momentary. We don't have that in FPV. Why we don't need a momentary switch. The left hand one is okay. What I have found, and I'm left-handed, and this could be specific to me, but this might be a tip for people. What I've actually now done, because I find I struggle at times to turn off that corner switch without pumping the throttle. I'm not, my hand, every time I disarm, I pump the throttle. So whenever you'll see me disarm, because as I'm moving my hand up, the throttle's moving and I'm catching it. So what I've actually done now is on the momentary is told that to force the throttle to 1,000 PWM while I hold that button. So what I'm now comfortable doing is taking my hand off the stick this stage because it's sprung, it doesn't move. Hold that button down, which then just kills the throttle, so the quad just drops, and then I can just move my finger to disarm very easily. But I'm
really
left-handed, so that could be a left-handed thing. Or again, my old hands not, and it's weird because obviously the throttle is not ratcheted. I've got it very smooth. I'm just naturally, as I'm moving to hit that button on the corner, I'm pumping. It's like every time, and I've tried to stop myself doing it, and I missed. There should be 3 position switches on the outside. It's got 2s, and in FPV, I only actually use 2 modes in FPV. I tend to have it's acro and so I have a self level on there. I can't remember what the term is in beta flight these days. It's just handy to have. Often at the time, angle mode, yeah. It's often at the time actually where I said earlier where I'm flying where I can't see to land. So what I'll do is just bring it in close, drop it into angle mode so I can push the goggles up, and then just do it that way. I know I'll get slated for using the word angle mode around FPV because it's seen as the thing, but look, sometimes you've got to do what you got to do. But I wish there was a third so I could have GPS rescue on the switch as well, just as a backup for some of my larger quads. There is a 3-way on the second switch in, but that's not ideal for mode selection. What I'd have preferred if Radio Master would actually swap them the other way around. If they had to do a 2 and a 3, put the 3 on the outside, the 2 in the middle, that would have been a better layout. But overall, I think that's about my only complaint. The mode buttons along the bottom are probably too close to the surface as well. They're very hard to feel with the goggles on. You won't use them a lot in FPV, but if you're flying bigger craft, I got a couple of like 12-inch, 14-inch bigger birds there. I was flying one FPV and it's like feeling down for the mode buttons and they're virtually flat with the surface. So, ideally, if they could be up under the mill, that would be bang on. But phenomenal.
When we're talking like absolute tiny little changes like that, it's a pretty damn good radio. So
they've done an amazing job, and they really have. And it's a great package. The radio, the case, you get the silicon stick protector as well. That comes in the main kit. I think, compared to the others, it's a good deal. It's like $140, I think it is, or something like that off the top of my head. And you can't knock what they've done with it.
What are your thoughts on the AG01 gimbals? Because those are always a hot topic. People are like, are they worth the however much extra they are when you could pretty much nearly buy an entire Boxer for that now?
Look, I've got to be careful because look, I did not pay for mine, so I will be very open and clear about that up front. So the next question is, would I pay for them? I would. However, I am a person who likes bling. They functionally do not make the radio any better. They do not make you fly better. They do not improve anything that you could quantify. What they do, though, is give a lovely feel if you're a person hard on the stops. So whereas I was saying earlier about the slamming against the ends, because they are absolutely solid CNC, they have a lovely feel when you are doing that. It's hard, it's precise, it's stop. They are smoother than the version 4's plastics a little bit, but what you get is just a weightier feel. There's more weight to the gimbal. There's definitely more weight to it in the movement, and a harder stop.
Right.
But they're $120, I think.
Yeah, they're up there.
I think it's very hard to say it's worth it, but if you're a person who buys a car and then goes and spends another 10%, 20% of the value of that car, blinging it up with stuff, then you'll like them. But it's a hard sell any day of the week. What I would say, though, is it could also be an investment, because if we now look what Radiomaster have done, they've used them in the TX16, they've used them in the Boxer. So there's technically no reason those gimbals will be around potentially forever. So even if you're changing your radios in the future, as long as you're staying within the same size class, because the Zorro does use the AJ01 minis, I think you'll be able to move them across. So, but it's hard to really, do they make you $120 better? No. I can't argue that any day of the week. But I would personally have still spent the money.
That's always interesting though. I'm keen to know this sort of stuff.
I think the problem is the radios are so cheap. It's not that the gimbals are so dear, it's actually the radios are so cheap. If you add up, say, a Boxer with AJ01s, you're talking about $270, $280. I think that's a fair price for what you're getting, especially if you compare it to some of the FR Sky stuff, you know, others out there. We're so used to radios being cheap. That's where the problem is. And then it skews our perception of anything that isn't or adds premium. I think if they made them with, I'd love to see like a carbon fiber style cover for the Boxer. I think if you could have the AJ01s and that's something, if it was like a kit, almost like a bling kit is the term I'll use, but just you get the mini, you get the AJ01s, you get the LED rings, and maybe you get a new front cover or front and back shells, and maybe put $20 on the price or something, and make it you're turning the radio into the premium model, not just the gimbals themselves.
The pimp your radio out.
Your radio version, yeah.
That's surely what it's called. The pimped out Boxer.
Yeah, and I've seen some lovely mods on the Boxer. There's one I shared on my Discord this morning, which was bright orange, bright yellow, like day glow yellow, and it looks fantastic with the black gimbals, the yellow.
Yeah,
I've seen some carbon ones. So, you know, Radiomaster do like to bling up their gear, and the great thing is, and I do like this about Radiomaster, they give you choice. You know, you don't have to buy the £300 radio. You can go out and get the Zorro for $99, I think the Boxer for $140, the TX16 for about the same as a base model, and it is great. The gimbals are good. It works well. You don't have to spend all that money, but if you do want the premium radio, then they have an option that, you know, some of the TX16s go to like $400, don't they? I think the JB one is.
They get really up there. Like there's just so many tiers in between.
Yeah.
But there is that extremely premium one that it's a big price tag.
Yeah, yeah, and they give people the option if they want that. And it is absolutely status looks, but sometimes it's nice just to have something you think, you know what, I've bought the best I could afford, or it's the best one you can get, and that's why there's a premium market for some of this stuff as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to treat yourself occasionally, and hey, you know, with an FPV, sometimes that's a little bit hard. You know, sometimes you buy the most expensive motor just because, you know, why not? And then sometimes, you know, maybe you just want to bling out your controller. So that's
the problem with FPV is it is getting more expensive, especially the last 12, 18 months. There's a lot of good cheap gear out there now as well. There is, you know, I think we're finally at a stage, you don't see like flight controllers burning out, ESCs burning out like you used to. They're all good now. That generally, like if you slam it into a hedge and it goes on fire, or a fence or a wall, then okay, I don't think we can complain too much on that one. But you're not so much seeing the stuff like you used to. You know, I built my aircraft, I've armed it, and the motor went on fire. You don't see so much of that now. I think the electronics has got to a point of We understand the issues. The quality is good enough, even at the lowest level now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then when you do start hiking up those price tags, what you actually get for them is
Yeah,
generally like bulletproof stuff at that
yeah,
point, or at least it's very far far advanced within the technology world that it
yeah,
makes it worth that price tag. So
yeah, yeah. And
I do have to say, oh sorry,
sorry.
go for it.
No, I was just going to say, like you saying about motors, and it's funny because I've pretty much moved over to Zings completely, Zing 2s. Everything I
Okay.
personally build now has a Zing motor because it just works. I've never had one fail. That's it. Flyfish RC just sent me some of their new stuff, which is very nice. They're a company that's like appeared out of nowhere,
Mm,
and their motors actually are a lot like the Zings.
okay.
This new bind and fly I was just looking at comes with some other motors by another manufacturer, and it's been a while since I've seen some other motors. And what for me was quite interesting is just comparing like the Zings and these Flyfish ones, and I'm just thinking I'll probably just stick with the Zings. You see a lot of people talk about different motors and different. I'm not convinced there's that much in it anymore compared to the
Mm,
old days we used to have. If you look at all of the Zings 2, when they got their budget models, they just work. They're great. What you're paying the difference is you either have a titanium shaft or you don't. You either have the thicker windings or the thinner windings, and then they all just work and they all deliver good numbers now.
yeah, I think until you get into that extremely small
Yeah,
percentage of people that need, like when they're literally trying to shave milliseconds off of their times on a
yeah,
race or something like that, that's when new motors and specific motors become
yeah,
obviously a good point. But I think for the majority, and even just freestyle cinematic,
yeah,
throwing the quad around, why do we really need something that's the best? It's just like,
yeah.
well, these work.
And what
And
you want is a motor you can get another one of. When I buy motors, I always buy them in fives just in case,
yeah,
because you don't
yeah,
want to be a year later. And I've got a box full of motors down there, which I got 3 of because it's like, bugger, I've destroyed one and I can't get any
yeah,
more. And in some ways, you do need to try and stick to brands that you're going to get lots of. T-Motor are very good like that, but some of the T-Motor motors are very, very expensive. We're over $24, $25 a motor now.
yeah. Hmm. It's definitely it's a pretty high price tag to be having when you're just trying to build a quad. Like your motors are costing
Yeah,
half the build.
yeah,
It's like, well, okay, hold on. Have you tried the what are they the Emax Eco 2 motors? I think because
yeah,
those are another real cheap alternative.
yeah. They are, and funny enough, that's the ones I can't talk about because they're on this other thing.
Gotcha.
And yeah, they're all right. I think the quality isn't like the Zings. But
Right.
does that quality translate into any real world change? Who knows? If you feel the things, they have a really, they have a very coggy motor, so you can
Hmm.
feel that. You really do feel the magnets on the Zings. I did notice that the Eco 2s, it's a lot less apparent. It's a more
Okay.
finer, notchy experience. I haven't actually counted the poles to see how many it is. But yeah, I do know the Eco 2s. I got a 6-inch build. I've not finished with them, and they look good on the bigger size. It's quite a smaller motor. I was surprised in FPV sizing. It's smaller than the Zings and the others, the overall shape.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of good options out there. For new FPV, you want to pick the cheapest motor you can get plenty of, because if you're new into it, you're going to damage a bell, you're going to ping one. You want a motor that you don't want to have to spend more than 10, 15, 10, $12 quid on,
Yeah.
because if you're spending $20 on a motor on your first flight, you buckle 2 of them, that hurts. That's
Yeah.
a lot of money.
It is. And then once you replace that motor, you're like, okay, thank God. And then you
Yeah.
go for another flight and you bust out. And then the insides really start to cry, right? Like,
Yeah. You want to
I
go,
think we have run into
it's a
that issue.
term I use, is MVP. You want minimal viable product when you're starting out. Will it fly? Okay. And FPVs come
Yeah.
on so much. I've flown since 2014 on FPV, and I remember building craft that would literally, you build it and say, why doesn't it doesn't want to fly? It's all over the place because you had gyro issues, and board quality issues. I'll be honest, everything should fly. Betaflight is so good now. It'll sort most frames, motors, fly stacks out. They'll all fly to a very good minimum standard now. They really will.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had enough time within this hobby to notice any of these things. I've just been kind of blessed with having Betaflight so great coming into. I mean, I've been in for just over 2 years now. So since I've come into it, it's very much so been a very well developed product, essentially. Like from everything, from the building process of what parts are now available. Because I'm presuming if you started back in 2014, were you taking parts out of other things and building quads with them?
Yeah, so what you had was you had a combination of things. So FPV obviously has been around a very long time, and look, we've been flying FPV on wings and planes, and I've been flying for a lot longer than that. I've been flying on and off, but I sort of stepped away. I got a big obsession with fishing for a period of time, as in like for 20 years. and I carp fished all over the UK, all over parts of Europe, and I used to love that, and then I sort of gave that up and I went back to hobby because I went back to sort of motorbikes, that stuff I can do in the garage, and then I ended up back into Model RC. And I love technology. For me, it's all about the tech. And things had come on so much, and flight controllers have been around a very long time with the CC3D and all of them stuff, and we were building, FPV back then wasn't like it was today, but the basics are the same, and in many ways things were better. You were using single ESCs. There's a real argument actually we should go back to that today, because most of the time when you're binning an ESC, it's actually only one side that's gone down, yet you're binning a 40. Well, I think when ESCs are like $30-$40, it's not so bad. When ESCs have got 70, 80, 90 as they are today, even 100 plus, I think we're now back at the moment of starting to think, well, actually, should we go singles again? Because if you spend, at least you're only spending $20 on a replacement rather than $100 for the whole unit. But we used to have single ESCs, and it's very much the same. The real change was Betaflight. I used to fly you had open pilots on the CC3D, and then we had clean flight before Betaflight, and they're all sort of legacies off each other. And then Betaflight came, and for years Betaflight I just struggled with. I just couldn't get it to grips with all of this tuning, all of this PIDs, and you could do this, and then you need the filters for that, and then I was like, and what I love about Betaflight now, in the last probably 2 years, the sliders, they got to the point of sliders, and you suddenly just go, right, I'm going to put the master one up 2, put D-gain up a bit, feel the motors. Are they burning up? No. How does it feel? All right. That's it. I'm done. You don't have to, I don't believe you have to spend huge amount of time tuning these quads anymore. I tend to, every build, I move the master multiplier up at least 1. And I then just push the D-gain probably 2 steps and see how it feels.
That's something I need to get into. I don't even know the process to tune a quad. Like, I literally have no clue. I was like, I haven't even, it's terrible. And I will get crap for saying this, but I haven't tuned my race quad. Like, I built that and I haven't tuned it. And I really should tune it, because from what I've heard, you can just make it fly so much more snappy just simply by tuning your quad.
Yeah, and look, I think I'm not a great tuner. I've had to tune big birds, small birds. I was from the old days of, and tuning is very different today. I was from the old days of, you'd start with P gain, so you'd jam P gain up as far as you could until it started vibrating. So, and I'm talking here, a lot of this was for bigger quads as well as FPV, but you'd be sitting there and it would just be just that. So you've gone too far with P. So you then back P down until it's there. So there you go, you've hit your P. Then you'd move your D-gain up to the point where, again, it's not over twitching or vibration, and then drop it back, and then you get your eye to the same. And what you're trying to do is get all 3. Whereas today, the argument seems to be a bit different. You just pump the P up as far as you can, and then drop back and pump the D up until the motors are hot. And then your eye is your tracking gain more than anything. So your eye is it drifting off where it should be? And P gain, the PID loop is a complicated thing for most people to understand, but there is a great video out there. And the way I always, the way I always think about P gain is the force of movement. So how much force will the aircraft use to do the move? And I always think of it in your car as your throttle. The P gain is your throttle. So if you put your throttle down gently, it'll move gently. You put your throttle down fast, it'll move fast. Your D gain is your brake. How fast does it stop at the point you want it to stop? And how much force is being used to achieve that? So if you think about it, you want to stop and you don't want to go into the wall, you've got to apply a lot of brake. But if you over apply it, you'll stop too early or you'll overshoot. And that's the very basic analogy. But there's a great video on YouTube which shows the three on like this moving needle. I don't know if you've seen this. And it's three knobs and he's got P, D, and I. And he shows you each one. And watch that video. For anyone who's trying to learn P and D and I gains, watch that video. You will get a very basic understanding in like 2 minutes of what each of them does. But I'm not convinced you need it these days. I think Betaflight is so good. The master multiplier, the sliders, and it just flies so well out the box now. It just flies really good. Betaflight does now. It's come on hugely, hugely.
That's probably why I never really thought about, I didn't even think to tune a quad, because I bought the Nazgul first. That was my first ever proper 5-inch quad. And that, came, and from my understanding, it's a bind and fly, right? So it's good. I didn't even think there was anything else to do. Yeah. And hey, maybe.
No, and iFlight don't, and they are good. The iFlight tunes are very good. You'll find it, you might get a bit more on them, but that you're at 85% now.
Yeah. And so it's like from that point, I'm like, well, I didn't even think there was tuning, but it's for anyone that is wanting to actually tune and watch that video. It'll be down in the description box below. I will find it because I'm going to go watch that after this. Because
that's worth it. And look, there are some amazing tuning vids, and you got JB, who has some of the best PID tuning vids out there. But JB's taking it from a beginner angle, because that's JB's world. JB is taking you from birth to college is the term I always use, and that's what JB is fantastic at. But you've then got a lot more technical people. Chris Rosser has some fantastic tuning methods, as does UAV Tech. But there is an argument to be said today. If you're building a 5-inch, go on the presets tab, look for the Superfly presets, I think it is, and just install it. It'll probably be about bang on.
Well, actually, I think now that you say that, that's actually what I did for my my race squad. So maybe I technically have tuned it, but not properly tuned it. So that's that's always a good thing. I mean, hey, I've learned something about my quad today, so that's an upside.
Yeah. And I've spent hours in fields tuning quads, and it's boring. Just put a preset on and go fly.
Yeah, go rip the stick.
To be honest, I'm even arguing today of, unless you're racing and you absolutely knew it perfect, it'll be quicker for you to learn the quads quirks than it will to tune it. Yeah. That's the argument I've got these days. And I'm not the best at feeling. And there are really great tuners out there. There are people who really know how to tune a quad. And it's funny, I never I didn't fly an FPV bind and fly until last year. Every FPV quad I'd ever flown had been my own build.
Wow.
So I never actually knew what it should feel like. Because an interesting thing is, you're building these and you tune them to how you like them. But that could be, frankly, horrible to 90% of people.
Yeah.
And Chris Rosser sent me one of his, because Chris is brilliant. Chris is a friend, and he does all this great tuning and quads. And he's like, I'm going to send you one of mine. It flies better than anything else. And I was like, Chris, you do realize mine could be horrific. And actually, it was tight. What Chris's was just a bit tighter than mine. Right. Mostly, actually, what I never did a lot of was the up the stick tuning. And what I mean by that is sort of 60% onwards on movement. That's where you see a lot of the tuning really benefit, is the precision you gain in fast movement.
Right. Okay.
So it's stopping on the nail. It's dropping the P's gains and the D gains the right amount, because when you're increasing velocity, you're having to bring the gains back so it doesn't overshoot. And that's where the sort of tunes really benefit. If you're tutoring around a field, it's rate. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, my phone is. I have an alarm set for some random reason, and it's gone off.
Well, that's the alarm now. That's
Yeah, no, it's just a crazy one. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I did actually want to touch on, so we've talked about, JB being a YouTuber, Chris Ross being a YouTuber.
Yeah.
You yourself create YouTube content. What actually,
Yeah.
when did you start? Like, what made you start onto YouTube?
It's weird, and I started in about 2014. So there are videos that go back to 14, predominantly 15. There are offline ones that go back to 14.
Oh, we all have those, mate.
Very good reason. And look, I started in FPV then, but I actually got into camera drones more. And what started was I started just posting stuff that I learned. So, and back then, for anyone, and most of the videos are still up. I haven't taken them down, contrary to what you're told as a creator. Take all your old stuff offline. I used to be Mr. Hands because this, for varying reasons, never went on camera, and it was always all you saw was really that.
Yeah.
And I just started. It was always look. I found this thing. I'm going to share it with people. I found this thing that drove me nuts for an hour. I'm going to tell someone else so they don't have to spend an hour with it driving them nuts. Because I've always been a person that, right, I got this problem. First thing, is that the problem? Next thing, go on Google. Next thing, go on YouTube. Because why would I spend 3 hours messing with something when some other poor bugger has already spent 3 hours messing with it and put the answer on there? I'll take every shortcut I can get.
Yeah.
So I started just doing that and posting a couple of videos on and I was doing a lot of testing, and then I ended up doing stuff with DJI for a bit. I actually helped them with their Facebook groups, actually ran their Facebook groups with them. I was an admin on all of the main groups. I was the one that actually set up the FPV group with their admin team. I ran it, and that all sort of fell apart for varying reasons. And really, it was always about just sharing info. I still genuinely don't know why I do it. If I'm going to be bluntly honest, it takes up a huge amount of time, and the benefit is minimal in the sense of it's not my full-time job. So I have a real world job outside of FPV, outside of drones. It's nothing to do with this. The two worlds do not collide. They're completely different entities. I'm an engineer by trade. That's what I am. So it's not for the money. I'm not a creator that sits there going, you're paying my bills. Would I ever go full-time? I don't know. And I've seen JB do that. And that's an interesting topic we might touch on in a minute. But yeah, the idea was just sharing info. For me, it was about, I found this weird thing. Here's about it. And it sort of grew from there. And it then became an obsession. Frankly, it is an obsession. You do a video a month, and then you do a video every 2 weeks, and then you do a video a week, and then you think, I need to do 5 this week. and the algorithm drives you to that more and more. And I've been doing it a long time, 7 years. It's a long time to have been a creator. I'm actually comfortable with the term creator now. It was a weird term I wasn't comfortable with for a long time. The term YouTuber.
Right.
I am a creator. I put content together. I don't put very compelling content together. Something I was thinking about before we came on actually is my content isn't content you enjoy. Mine is factual. I need this piece of information style content. I would not for 1 minute say anything I make is enjoyable. So what I mean by that is I can watch a Rotor Riot video and go, wow, I enjoyed that. Do you know what I mean? You see the lads out. I watched the one the other day where they were testing the 8S. JB was in a few in a row, and Bubby was there and a few others. And there's a few I've watched, and it's like, oh, I enjoyed that. And the wing one, did you see the wing where they landed a quad on the wing? I don't know if you've seen that.
Is that the recharging video one, or is that a?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a great video, and I sit down and I enjoyed that content. It was a piece of escapism, just like you might watch TV. I don't make that content. That's not the world I'm in. I'm in the factual, informational business.
See, I would almost beg to differ in a sense, because I would call your content educational. So, like, wait, hold on, no, wait. edutainment. That was the one. So it's educational, but it's also entertainment combined.
Yes.
So it's, what is it?
Yes.
Edutainment. That's literally what I call it, because I enjoy watching your content because I'm gonna learn in depth about something that there's no way in hell I'm pulling apart, right? Like for
Yeah.
you, you're pulling something apart, you're tearing into it, and like to me, that's really interesting to watch because I'm interested in it. It's like just the passion to watch that. But there's probably no way in hell that I'm going to be the guy that's pulling apart, a brand new piece of tech. I'm not ruining that. I'm like, well, I'm good. So I'm like, that's educational and entertainment to me at the same time. Like I'd put you as like an edutainer. That's sort of, I feel like that's sort of content.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it's funny, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and look, I've been doing this a long time, and there are times you can make it look easy, and there are times you make it look hard, and it's like my Sunday live streams sort of got quite popular in the sense of it gets sometimes it gets 100 people, sometimes it gets 300 people. We get quite a lot of times, but it's actually me. The live stream's a bit different because what you're actually getting is me. You're not getting, right, I'm going to talk about this today. You're getting me spilling on my thoughts, my opinions. Not always a good idea, but that's the joy of a live stream. Whereas it's not, right, I have this new product, I'm going to tear it apart, and I'm going to try and make sure by the end of this video you understand A, B, and C. I don't script any of my content, as probably everyone can tell. Everything I do is off the cuff. So I've never written a script in this day and age. So when I'm going into something, I'm going into it with what I know already or what I'm learning as I'm moving through it. And I've always had this fairly simple attitude as if you know the subject, you should be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't matter where I am. Someone could put me on the spot and say, tell me about Avatar HD. I should be able to, I could spill every spec, everything, because I just know it, because it's the world I'm buried in. But I do look at some of the other creators, and there's some people doing some amazing work. And, JB is top of the pile right now, but he's not just that. He's also, from a creator point of view, at his A game. I watched one of his videos the other day, and it isn't a big video. It isn't a great video. It's the review of the HLG or HLC backpack.
Okay.
And it is one of the best samples of how to review a product I've seen. The video is informational. He covers the important detail. He walks you through his opinions. He shows you the product. He tells you the plus and minus points. And it's a masterclass in how to do a product review. I sat there and watched it, and I just, when it's like someone, playing the ping pong or something, he hit everything. And I come off watching, it's not the biggest video, it's not the shiniest video in the world, but from a messaging, an overall opinion and output, it's the peak. I saw that and just thought, he made that look so easy. It's crazy. Here's this new backpack. Here's what I like. And you're always looking at what other people do. I don't watch a lot of other content creators because I don't have time. I do watch Background of JB, and I watch a lot of actually PC gaming content because that's another style stuff I'm into a lot. Gamers Nexus, J2Sense, Linus. Obviously, Linus isn't gaming, but I still watch Linus a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting being in a space with people like JB, but my content is different to everyone else's. And I probably got to change a little bit because I've always been heavily niched. It was always very, look, you're going to put it on a spectrum analyzer. And I love that stuff. But there's a point where, is it interesting to watch? And if I'm critical of myself, the content doesn't have enough story. You sort of need to have a point A, and you'll know this as a videographer yourself. And what's the end game?
Yeah.
And that is what JB, I think, does better than anyone else today. Now, you got Bot, who's just delivering some of the best engaging and enjoyment content. You just watch Bot and you're just like, that's mad. That's just crazy.
Literally, yeah.
Chris is banging out some amazing, pure data content.
Yeah.
Chris Rosser, I'm going to show you this, and this from an educational and pure data point of view.
Yeah.
And I think I'm probably somewhere in the middle of them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I still don't know why I do it. To circle back around to the first question. Sorry, I went on a tangent. Yeah, I still don't fully understand why I do it. Genuinely, I do wonder.
That's interesting. I mean, at least that goes to show that the passion is real, because if you don't know why you do it, at least, like, you're not, I mean, I presume you're not just doing it out of habit, like you're still setting up a camera and you're still editing a video. So it's still like a point of, it comes from like a point of just, I guess, wanting to help people from the sounds of why you started. It just all boils down to wanting to provide a bit of value to people, and just being like, hey, you don't have to get stuck on this like I did, or, I'll help you understand that way easier now.
Yeah, that's certainly the goal. The goal is to be open, honest, and provide info that people will not get anywhere else. Whereas with the bits where I say I don't really know why I do it, when you add up just how much time it takes, but I think people have a very lack of understanding overall of just the effort it takes is crazy, And I built this to the point where I can walk in and make a video now. So this is a workshop studio. So I have camera setup, mic. I have a Rodecaster Pro. I've got A10 Mini. I got recorders. I don't have any setup time anymore. And that changed everything for me. That was the fundamental difference between making content and the prep time. Now is the product, not getting the camera out, getting the lights on. I have an Amazon switch where I press the button and the lights come on. It is a ready to go setup, and that changed everything for me, because it meant I was no longer sort of I go back, there are some videos where the lighting was off, the camera's out of focus, there's this or there's that. The only thing I've got to do, being Panasonic, and you'll know what I mean by this, is because it's not a proper focus system, it's a servo driven focus, it never stays where I leave it. So every time I turn the camera off, I have to refocus them.
That's
really drives me nuts.
But that's okay. Once, I mean, when it's the only thing, like it's kind of okay. Like, I mean, I still got to do exactly what you're talking about. Like, I generally don't film within my bedroom. But obviously right now I still had to bring the light and set the light up and just, clean the room a little bit, make it look like a nicer set than just a standard bedroom. But generally speaking, I'm still recording just outside this door behind me, in my little hallway office studio. And all that is me moving this big light that's up here out there, setting a camera up on a tripod, and then setting my mics up, my lavalier mics, moving my computers around to the back side of my desk so that they have more of a backlight for me, and then starting a video. And by the time I've done that, we're talking probably, I can probably nail it in 15 odd minutes, but it's still 15 minutes of consistent prep, consistently getting into it. And I can already just tell and feel the value of like having a ready to go setup. You walk in, snap your fingers, it's ready to go, you're filming, and that's you. You can get into like your actual creative thought process of what I'm filming today.
And it cuts out the mistakes. And look, I've had them all. You set the camera up and you don't quite push the microphone cable in enough, so you get no audio, and you sit there and record an hours long of footage and go to edit and go, there's no audio. The focus is off, the battery's flat, all of this stuff over the years causes you pain. And the one thing I've managed to get to the stage now of have a permanent setup. It's all based through OBS. It's not the best, but I'm always tweaking it, but it's pretty much where I want it to be. And I actually, a lot of the time now, my workflow has changed to record, edit. So I'll actually have OBS recording, Resolve open, I'll record a segment and drop it into the timeline. Then I'll record another segment and drop it into the timeline.
Wow.
And then I'll start looking at how the flow of the video is going. And then I can actually change it, because I don't script. I can then sort of go, and then just re-record a bit and shove it between, and then and do that. And that is almost how all of my content is done now. It's if I know exactly point A and point B and where I want to go, I'll just go through in one. But if I'm doing something on an opinion subject, like DJI have done something, or the recent Orca thing, I'll do it in segments and lay it out as I'm actually doing it. Okay. And that allows me to sort of direct and edit at the same time, because I'm watching myself back 30 seconds later going, oh, I didn't like the look of that. Or why did you make that face? Or what was that about? Or there's a can sitting on the side, or there's something, so you can instantly go back and change it. But the setup helps, but I don't script as I probably should. As something I've been looking into a bit more. It really comes down to, do I want the channel? What do I want with the channel, really, in the long term? The channel's grown a huge amount in the last 2 years, far more than I ever anticipated. I remember being at like 10,000 subs, thinking I'm never going to get to 20. And then you get to 20, and then you can see 30 come, and now we're just over 40, and we're not a big channel. Yeah. And I use we as the royal we. It is just me and my wife, but she does a bit. But where do I expect it to go? 50, 60, 70? I don't know. But I can actually see sort of 80,000 subs now, whereas that seemed impossible to think of in the past. I've actually now learned that it's all effort. It's more content, more info, getting what you're doing better. I think I'm very good at what I do now. So the question is, do you just keep doing that more, or do you decide to do something a bit different? And that's, it's a constant evolution.
It is.
I suppose you've got to have an end game.
Yeah, well,
and I don't have an end game.
So, right? I mean, I feel like you don't have to have a massive end game, right? Like, I mean, no. I can't even think of an end game for me right now. I just want to keep going, and I think that's the beauty, and also like the beast of creating content for YouTube. Like, you always have these goals, and you always set them, and if they're numbers based, you'll get to them, and you'll be like, more, like every single time. I started this year getting 30 views a video, and now I would get like 300 on an average, up 10 times my views, and I'm here like, that's great. What's the next step? Like, just, I think being a creator on YouTube is always like the point of, well, what's next? What can I do to improve my content to go up another level? What's something else I can create? Like, this podcast is directly from that thought process. What's something else that I can create that people are going to enjoy? A podcast. Let's give it a try. And I mean, now we're at episode 11, episode 12, one of them. And like, that's pretty crazy to me, of just, that's 12 weeks worth of a podcast now.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is, I always try to keep it. I don't watch the numbers too much. I don't care about the subscribers. I care about the quality of the info. I can't care about the quality of the content, because clearly I don't, if you've watched the channel. However, I care about the info. If the info is good, that's important. Is it right? Is it honest? Is it helping someone? So that was always the goal, spreading info. And as I said, the bit you then sort of go is the numbers go up, and you'll get this yourself. Also, the next big hurdle is you go up, and like you're getting like 30, 40,000 views a video. And now you're back down at 3,000, which we are at today. And like this time last year, FPV was bouncing. We had the Avatar HD launch. We had the end of COVID. We had DJI's O3 system around the corner. Any video was going out was just banging 10K numbers within 2 days. And today we're lucky to get 2 or 3 on my channel. JB is still pushing huge numbers, but JB is a different animal. And what you can't do is worry about it. You have this sort of tide. The tide comes in and the tide goes back out. What you've got to be willing to do is stay on the boat and make sure that you keep floating. You make sure you keep moving through. You're seeing a lot of people exit the space. For me, it's just about keeping the content real, keeping it honest, providing info that people cannot necessarily get anywhere else. And as long as I keep doing that, the channel will keep growing. And is that 100 people, 1,000 people? It doesn't matter. At that point, if you're helping someone, the numbers don't matter. What the numbers do is give you credibility. And actually, that's the one thing I've learned. The numbers give you credibility with manufacturers. Yeah. That's what the numbers do.
Man, that was the best analogy that I've heard of like a creator space, of the tides in the boat. That's bang on. Like, couldn't actually get any closer to that. That's fantastic. That sounds like it comes from someone who's been through a few tides in and out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like 7 years. You learn a lot. you know, and I said earlier, you know, I'm actually quite good at this now, and you can't be afraid to say that. I'm actually really good at sitting down and delivering a bit of content that I know about. Not so much that I don't, but I can sit down and do a piece to camera consistently now, predominantly. Not yesterday, I put a video on my Discord of some days of how it horribly goes wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like some days I just can't say something. But actually, for me, that's because what I'm trying to say, my brain is actually telling me this is wrong. Or you're not going where you want to be with this. So when I'm struggling, I've actually got to stop. It's not that I need to go and learn it. I've got to look at what am I actually saying here, because it's not naturally rolling out. I should be able to naturally say, you know, here's this new flight controller. It's got an F4, it's got this, it runs beta flight, comes with this is the benefits, this is the downsides. If you keep getting stuck on something, you've got to sort of look at, okay, why am I getting stuck on that? What about that? Am I saying it wrong? Am I not directing it in the right way? And I tend to find that for me. But yeah, 7 years is a long time to sort of get used to seeing how the YouTube algorithm works and how the system, you know, I had people wouldn't talk to us for ages, manufacturers, you know, for nothing, you know, 10,000 subs, they didn't want to know, 20,000 subs, you start getting little offers here and there. It was only really when I hit 30,000 subs to the likes of Radio Master and some of the other good companies who I like say, yeah, hey, we like what you do. Here's something. But I've always tried to stick to the mentality of I will say what I think.
Yeah.
And I will not accept any terms, period, on any of my content. I have no issues with a manufacturer seeing the content up front, but God help them ask to change something because they won't like my response, because I have built my channel on credibility and being open and honest. And if I have to burn a bridge with a manufacturer, I absolutely will. And that's why I've been so pushing Patreon recently, because it gives me complete independence. So I can just go and buy it. You know, if I see something, and I'm not saying you £10,000, but if there's a new RC and the manufacturer doesn't want to send it to me and people keep talking about it, it's like, okay, I'll go and get it.
Yeah.
And I'll say how it is. And that's important, because the internet is full of a lot of bias, and it's not fair to say people do it on purpose either. It's really easy as a creator to not want to upset a manufacturer. Yeah. Because it's really important to have a product on launch day, okay? People don't really understand the importance of this, especially a big product in a segment. So big in FPV might be a new Radio Master radio.
Yeah.
Big in drones is a new DJI drone.
Oh, yeah.
Day one is key, right? If you're not on day one, you may as well not for the next 3 weeks. Yeah. Basically, because you're going to get held back. And there are advantages to not necessarily doing day one and doing day 3 or 4, because you then get in that initial, as it falls, you come back in, because you get that peak of interest, and then that falls off again, the tide. And then you can actually have a bit of a second push on it. But you've also got not to be a slave to that. And if a manufacturer is producing a product that doesn't, you know, someone is going to call you out if you say something is great and it isn't. So you've got to be willing to say, you know what, this isn't very good. I'm sorry, but thank you for sending it. Do you want it back? Yeah. You know, but my video is my video. I'm not, you know, if you get something wrong, and I'm not even saying you don't work with manufacturers, you should, if you find an issue, highlight it to them. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't put it in the video. Bingo. You know,
I mean, if it's a product that's out there in the world, then, and people can purchase it, then it's like a point of, well, okay, you know, you guys could make the mistake at this stage of purchasing said product because it is available right now. And if I don't say this, then, you know, there's going to be issues in that sense. But versus, you know, say you're doing like a prototype, then it would be a little bit different.
Yes. And that's the thing. If you have if you have an early access that is a pre-release, what I would always do in that situation is be very clear that what you're seeing here is a pre-release product. The end product may change. Yeah. And if there are some stuff which I know will be fixed before it releases, I won't even mention it. Yeah. So if I know, you know, I've already spoke to them, they're going, yeah, it's in the next firmware update, it's sorted. There's no point. But if there's something where you think, actually, this could be a problem for some people, but it's not really something that's going to, and that would be like on a radio that isn't very ergonomic in a certain way, or a set of goggles that has something which you think, well, for some people that might be a problem.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental design thing. And then you sort of go, well, look, this has to be highlighted for this subset of people. And so be it on the manufacturer. And I'm not afraid to burn bridges. I've burnt many bridges with manufacturers. I hope to get to the stage like Gamers Nexus do, where you burn the bridge, but it's been a long enough time that they come back around and build it again.
Yeah.
I'm not quite there yet. There aren't any.
Okay.
That's, hopefully it gets to the stage also where you get big enough that they can't ignore you as well. Because at the end of the day, you always want to be doing the right thing for the consumer.
Yeah.
I don't matter what people, you always get this stuff on, he was sent for free. I don't care if someone sends it for me for free. If people think I'm going to change an opinion for a $500 product that I've had to spend 4 or 5 hours of my life recording a video and editing on for free, and you think I'm going to give a positive opinion on that, it's not worth it. That 4 or 5 hours of my time is more valuable than that £500 with my kids, with my wife. There's bias everywhere. There's bias in purchase bias. You buy something, you don't want to hear something you've bought is bad. We've all been there. We've all bought something off the cuff and gone, oh, I've got this issue. And you go online and suddenly there's like 1,000 people going, oh, you shouldn't have done that.
The Avata.
Yeah, and you get that. There's bias everywhere. Just because it's sent for free doesn't mean it's bias. But there are people that will sort of try to protect relationships. And actually, we're really lucky in FPV. FPV is really good. It's more the drone space, the DJI space. To be honest, a lot of stuff out there is ads now than review videos, unfortunately.
That is fair. And it comes down to that, of the point of, especially if they're even a paid review, it also becomes, I guess, difficult in a sense for a creator who maybe they're trying to make it into their full-time thing and they've really put aside the time for that, and they have lost some income because of that. Now they really wanted to keep a sponsorship going, like a paid sponsorship, because it's now paying their bills, and they've got like that potential of like, if I screw this up, I need to find another job, and so I think for some people that's probably their mindset. And I think for you, that's a really massive positive for having YouTube as, I would call it like a passion, right? Like obviously you have some income from it, but as you mentioned before this podcast, everything you get from the channel goes back into the channel. So it's a very different approach to, you rely on the income from your channel to pay your bills, like it's a completely different story. So from that point, you can be super honest, super opinionated, and just be real with people. And that's like the biggest plus factor, I think, to not necessarily being monetarily dependent on YouTube.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because, it's easy for me to have a very strict opinion on this because I'm in the position I can. And as you say, it is hard when you don't, and like I've never done a paid video. So I can openly say to this moment in time, I have never been paid to make any content. I've been offered probably in the drone space a few times and I've turned it down. I was like, no, just send the product.
Yeah.
But just send it, and actually one of the companies offered me money. It was a product that I built and they were like, look, we're not paying you to make the video. We know this is going to take like 4 hours. So can we at least compensate you for that? We're not putting any conditions on it. We're not saying, you have to make a video, but we know to do this the way we'd like you to do it, because we want you to do this. We'd like to compensate you for that time. And I just went, no, I'm not taking the money, but I'll do it that way. Yeah. And I did it that way. But that way, I've had a couple of companies in the 3D printing scene want to pay. And what I tend to do now is make the offer so high they say no. I'm really looking forward to the first one that says yes.
Heck yeah.
Because I'm buying something nice. And I don't charge 30,000. But I want $1,000 if you want me to do that. And I do it on purpose because I price it at the stage of, if you're going to say yes to that, I'm going to take it at that money, but I'm not going to take it before. But at that point, and you said something interesting for me earlier, paid review. See, in my world, a paid review doesn't exist. So I have a very simple definition of things I run to on this channel.
Yeah.
I'll have a review, which is completely my own, or I will have a sponsored video, which will have no opinions of mine in them at all. So I will basically, I don't mean sit there and read the spec sheet, but I will say, let's just say it was a 3D printer, you know, this manufacturer says this, they say that, they say this, and it will be so obvious it is paid, because I think you have to. I think you've got to, you can't blur these lines too much. You've got to be, and would I at the end say, you know what, right, that's their bit over. Now I'm going to give you some thoughts, possibly. But it would have to be, it cannot just be for me, that little label that comes up in the corner that says this is a sponsored video.
Yeah.
It needs to almost be, this manufacturer has paid me to tell you about this product. And that's what I'm going to do today.
That's a
bearing
great take.
Yeah, and bear in mind, any of the numbers, the specs, the features I give you are based on what the manufacturer is telling me based on their spec sheet. If that is wrong, you should take that up with that manufacturer. And that's it. And the reality is they're never going to let one of those videos go out.
No,
because they'll
you
just
see,
go,
you see on launch day, right? Like for a lot of big products, on launch day they come out, people have obviously been paid for them, and they come out, tell you every single great thing about it, and they'll even put their opinions in there of how great it is. But the thing they fail to do is, one, they probably haven't spent enough time with it to actually figure out what's bad about it.
Yeah.
But two, they, one, either don't want to say what it is, or they're not allowed to say what it is. So like the point of, that's a real wholesome and genuine take on a paid review, because if I ever watch a review of something, I promise you, if I see that it says it's sponsored and I'm on the fence about the product, I'll immediately go and find another video. I actually don't want the opinions that have been paid to like get into my eyes. You know, like it just doesn't work. Because otherwise, I'm going to be convinced. I can be convinced to do things by watching 10 reviews that are all paid and they're all telling me go buy it. You know, like it's a great product, and then you watch the one person, maybe like yourself, Ian, and you know you've made this review and it's an actual review, and you're like, yeah, well, it's good, but X, Y, Z. And I'm like, huh. No one else said that. Like,
no one mentioned that, and that's the frustration. And I get it. As a young creator, it's got to be hard. It is hard. You know, I know. You know, look, I know what income the channel has, and it's not enough today for me to go full time. I would openly say that it would probably have to quadruple. If it quadrupled, I could think, ooh, that's a possibility. Would I want to is a real different question, though. That's a tough one, because, again, that you have to then, and it is hard, you know, if you go, you know, if you've got 20,000 subs and you go full time, you got bills to pay. You got to pay your mortgage. And how do you do that? And the one thing I've pushed a lot, and I bang this drum a lot, is Patreon. And my patrons are amazing, and I'm terrible to them because I don't really do much dedicated Patreon content. I don't offer all of this amazing stuff. I have a very limited amount of time, and all of that goes into the channel content you see today. I don't have 1% free. And all I've always sort of said to my patrons is, be under no illusion the donations you give allow me to continue to do this, because I would genuinely, I think if I lost the patrons today, I'd give up now. I'd just go, enough. That's it now. I can't keep doing this, because I need to be in the position of, if the real interesting one is that Rotor Riot video on the launch day of the Avatar HD, you know, they are some of my biggest popular videos, because I bought them on day one, not been sent them from the manufacturer, tore them apart, said how it was. Literally on film, sat there and said, don't buy this, it's alpha. Don't go there today. Just do not do this, because it ain't there. But I don't blame any of the people who didn't say that, because they're all in their own positions. And I can be on my high horse and say, you know, you should always be open and honest. And they're not being open and honest. They're just not necessarily willing to go quite as far. And I'm not always right. That's the worst thing. You've also, you know, and JB actually said this, and it's something I've probably had to think about a bit more. There is a point where you become a size where you can kill a product. And I'm not there today, but people's opinion of my opinion is higher than it's ever been, in the sense of, I see people say on things like Facebook, I wonder what Mad thinks of this, or Ian thinks of this. Something new comes out and they're like, oh, I wonder what Ian thinks of this. And I love that. I think that's amazing. I never imagined getting into that position. But with that comes responsibility, because I could buy that new product from a small company, find a load of issues, say it's a load of crap, no one buys it, and they go under.
Wow. Yeah.
And I know JB spoke about this before. So there's also, you have to also be aware that you can have an impact on that company. So you always have to be fair. You can't just criticize for no good reason. You have to be fair, and also give it an opportunity to be right as well. You know, can they put this right, or is this fundamental? But that's the one thing I've noticed with size. Size, you got to be careful with that sort of weight that comes with the size you are, because people's opinion, people will base their purchase decisions on your opinion, positively, but negatively as well.
With great power comes great responsibility. That couldn't be any more true right now. Wow.
But I'm still burning bridges anywhere I have to. I did. For those who are on my Discord, there's often the meme of a bridge being burnt with me involved, because it's like, this is a load of crap.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a video. let's just say it. But yeah, I'm going to continue doing what we do. The plan is really, the channel's not going to change. It's grown a lot. I love the fact it's grown a lot. I'm hugely grateful for everyone who watches. You know, I still don't know why you do, but I really appreciate it. And it's just try and keep it real, keep it honest, keep it helpful. That's it. If I can keep doing that, everything's good.
And that's the most valuable type of content, I think, that is available on YouTube. Some genuine, honest content that people can trust.
Yeah.
And I'm stoked that you offer that. And for the people that maybe don't know who you are, where can they go to find your channel? Do you have an Instagram? Like, what's your Patreon too?
Yeah. So I do. Yeah, I have. So the channel is the official term is Mad RC, because I called it Mad RC originally.
Right.
And then I turned it into Mad's Tech, because RC was a bit limited. I need to put FPV in the title, because everyone puts FPV in the title of everything these days. I'm not. But so it's YouTube/Mad RC. I do have an Instagram, which I really post on. I tried to do a bit more. I find Instagram difficult, but I have done a bit. I think it's Ian_Mads Tech. I think it is something like that. And my Patreon is Mad RC as well. And really, yeah, you'll find me on YouTube. We have a lot of DJI. Digital FPV has really been my core content.
Yeah.
That has been the big one for me, and I probably was the first to cover digital FPV, going back to the Phantoms and all of that stuff before it come forward as well. So,
well, it's funny you say that, because I've literally, we've had such a great chat today, and I just don't want to take up any more of your time, but I've actually got some more questions that I was keen on asking
it's fine.
you. It's all good. I feel like it'll be worth getting you on to this podcast again for another episode in the near future.
Yeah.
And we can run through, because I honestly have I got this list, and I've got them through 4.
That's my fault.
I've got them through 4. I've gone through 4 questions, and I've got over 10 there. But it's so good. I love it. And so I feel like what'll be really good is to actually have you back on the podcast, and we'll have another chat. But
sorry, I've waffled. I will waffle. You've got to be warned. I will waffle.
It's not waffling. It's just talk. I love it. It's the best part. It doesn't feel like we're sitting here and going question, answer, question, answer, question. We're just here having a chat. And I think for the viewers, that's probably one of the best things possible. They can be sitting in their car, they can be chilling in their room, wherever they are, just relaxing and being like, oh, cool, this was actually a genuine conversation. So thank you for coming on, Ian. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for your time. But yeah,
no problem at all. I've enjoyed it. It's been an absolute pleasure. It really has.